Okay, welcome to the Hardscape Insider Podcast. We're here all about building success in the hardscape industry. I'm your host, Brian Basic, owner of the Citadel Hardscape Marketing. After spending 20 years in corporate America, leading sales organizations and scaling and selling my own home services company and launching a marketing company, I discovered my passion, helping hardscape contractors grow and dominate their local markets. Each episode will bring you real-life success stories, expert interviews, and actionable strategies to help you take your business to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale, we've got your insights, ideas, tools to turn your business into a market leader, and we're going to do that and have some fun along the way. So let's dive in and start building your success. This is the Hardscape Insider Podcast.
All right, so here we are ready for our next edition of the Hardscaper Insider Podcast. I'm so excited about today. We have such a good guy here today. Bailey Peer from Peer Landscaping is here. We have known Bailey for a number of years, and he has agreed to come on and chat with us. You know, we try to cover different things every time we do a podcast. The first one we did was all about a new company, a cement company, and how he's scaling. He's now reached $1 million, and so he's trying to get to the next phase. The next one was on pitching, the importance of pitching, picking a niche, right? Mm-hmm. And so this one, I really kind of want to focus on scaling. How do you take a company that's small and then bring it to the point where you can begin to scale, which is kind of at where you're at today. So I'm excited about Bailey. Bailey, thanks for coming on here. This is kind of a redo. And so this is part 2.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that. So thanks for being on that. And so maybe you can kind of tell the folks out there, give some background about who you are, what you do, and where you're at in your business.
Absolutely. So my name is Bailey. I'm the owner of Peer Landscaping. We started our business 8 years ago. That's when the journey started. And I was going to FSW Community College. And after a year and a half, I decided, you know what? If I'm working this hard in school and I hate it, I can apply that to a business. I can be successful. So fast forward 8 years. Now we do landscape design and renovation for our customers. So not hardscapes, but mostly with softscapes and making people's yards beautiful. So that's what we do. We're at $3 million in revenue this year. And our goal in 2026 is going to be to hit $6 million.
Wow, that's incredible. And so, a lot of the guys listening to, or people listening to this may be not at $3 million and maybe significantly less than that. And so, give an idea of kind of where your first couple years were at, what you were kind of struggling with at that point in time, how you were able to kind of work through those struggles to get to the first, say, $1 million. Mm-hmm. And what did that look like for you? Yeah,
I would say I didn't hit $1 million until the 4th year, I believe, maybe 5th year. And then once I hit that $1 million, it was pretty cool because a lot of things started changing.
Yeah.
But to get to that point, I had to do a lot of learning. So at first I had a t-shirt company. That was my first company, and I started that in high school, and it ended up failing. But that's no worries. It was a cool journey, and I learned a lot about business.
Sure.
But I didn't learn enough. So my first 4 years was learning business itself because nobody teaches us like sound business practices and stuff in high school or anything like that.
Even in college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can go to college for 4 years and then come out looking like a doofus. I've had a couple of friends say, man, I wish I would have done what you did. So the first 4 years I chalk up as, man, I was grinding away, doing physical labor, learning sales, learning marketing. And even though that I grinded those 4 years, there's still so much more to freaking learn. But I was able to get to the $1 million mark in about that time. Some of the biggest things...
In about what time? How long?
In about 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
Somewhere in that range was when we were able to break the $1 million in annual revenue mark. The biggest thing that helped us get there, there's a couple things. One is I had an incredible spouse who was willing to do whatever it takes to support me, and she also did design, so that helped our company be a little bit different, and not just generic designs, like beautiful hand-drawn designs. And then she moved to computer generated, but it helped separate us and kind of make us niche down. And so when we niche down, it helped us get away from a lot of the competition and separate and create perceived value.
Right.
Another thing that actually had my mom help me when I first started, it might sound silly, but man, she helped me get organized because I hated the books. I hated all the BS. I wanted to go out there and meet with clients and get jobs. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And my mom helped me streamline and get business operations going on the back end, and that was kind of cool. She was a teacher, 9 to 5. My dad's a 9 to 5. Like, they didn't give me a bunch of trust money or nothing like that. They're both 9 to 5. I started the business with $350 from scooping ice cream at Love Boat, and then the rest was built on bootstrapping and hustle.
Okay.
So And the last thing and the most important one was I hired a coach. Even when I didn't have his retainer was $5,000 and he was going to help me for like 3 months, systemize some things because my mom and I were kind of freaking out. We were doing the best we could, and it was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? And I paid him that $5,000. He came into my business, helped me out, and I actually still have him on retainer now, and we're 4 or 5 years later. And it has been monumental to help me to get to where I am now because he taught me so much about business, so much about organization, and helped me really grow.
And so let's chat about that for a minute, because not many people, especially people who are struggling with their business, will think about hiring a coach. I mean, it's just not one part of the thing. I can use my money on a lot of other things.
Right.
A coach is not one of them. Yet, it is probably the best investment that you can make, because trying to scale your company and grow it by yourself is almost impossible. And so you kind of have to come to the position like, I need help,
Right.
which is not a bad place to be, right? And so you came to that position, and it sounds like it's still working because you still have the guy on a retainer, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I'm happy to pay him because he's so helpful to my company. And so what I've found is the biggest hurdle is it's either pride or, hey, I literally have $1,000 in my bank account and I need that for payroll, so I can't pay anybody else.
Right.
So what I've done to help other people is I've actually created a free course. And in that free course, it literally gives so much value to people for free. And then after they've taken that value or that information and turned that into money,
Right.
then they'll have enough money to come either hire me as a coach or somebody else as a coach, and they can have that completely free. So that's what I've found is once you humble yourself and you're willing to take and accept help, it could be from anybody. Once you're willing to accept help and not have a limited mindset, that's where the true growth unlocks.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, as you kind of figured things out, marketing played a big piece in what you're doing, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And so you and I talking earlier
Absolutely.
about, what are some of the first things that you do? Obviously, build a website, but make sure it's a good website. We talked about that earlier. And then doing those other things where, you want to do some local service ads possibly, or reaching out to your customer base. And there's a ton of things that you can do from a marketing perspective that we work with our clients on. But, what did you employ, starting out that kind of began to get the momentum going for you?
Yeah, as far as marketing, the biggest thing was understanding not enough people know about me. I do my best to make sure every client is super happy, and we do get referrals. But most people stop at getting referrals and having a decent website. That's where most people kind of stop their marketing.
Yep, that's true.
And they're like, hey, I want to continue to grow. And it doesn't work like you have to continue to look into and explore other facets. So whether it's local service ads, Google, Meta, any ads or local B&I group, anything has limits. So you need to diversify yourself.
Right.
All of them are good, for sure. Some are better than others, and you can dial in with dollars in those areas that you are able to track and see the ROI on. But you have to get aggressive. You can't, to be a company that scales, you cannot just rely on referrals and websites. Old school business, like your dad's business, let's say, they could make a good name for themselves and just operate on good word of mouth, and that's it. Today, there's too much competition.
Right.
That used to last for 30 years for companies. It doesn't work like that anymore. Meta, Facebook, Google Ads, there's too many platforms that many businesses are competing, and they're on, and you have to be in the marketing game, and you have to diversify in at least 5 different areas for you to be successful. And when I understood that and then invested money back into my marketing, that's what changed the business. I was stuck at 1.5 million for 3 years, man. 3 freaking years. I was stuck. I actually did 1.7, and then I did 1.2, and then I did 1.5, and I was stuck there. And then once I figured it out and I really invested more money into marketing, I shot up to 3 million. I was like, sweet. I already had the systems, processes, and all that set up. But you really got to understand marketing or partner with somebody like yourself to get to the next level.
And I meet with people all the time that they'll come to me and they say, I've spent some money on a website, and, I have to be the bearer of bad news to say, hey, your website sucks. We can redo it. It needs to be redesigned. It needs to be, updated with current keywords, all that kind of stuff. And then you really need to begin to think about some of the other things that you said, because really it's not a function of should I invest in marketing. It's, you should be investing in marketing with the ROI, with the platforms that give you the ROI you want.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I had my business before as well, and we scaled. And one of the things I looked at, I'd pay all day. If I can get a good return on my investment, it paid for itself. I'd do that all day, right? Yeah. It's when it didn't, then I'd start questioning, all right, what am I doing here? Because this is not working. And so understanding return on investment is really important. It's the factor that drives your investment, and there shouldn't be a doubt of whether you invest or not. It's just where, right?
Right. It should be where, exactly. Because at the end of the day, a lot of business owners are scared because they don't have enough margin, whether they're not pricing jobs correctly to have enough profit to reinvest. That's where I see the majority of people's problems are. But you have to reinvest, and it has to be in marketing. That is the number one place you should. That and sales training is very important.
And it's funny. We talked. I think my first podcast was with an owner he was just understanding that not every job is a good job. There is you should get paid for the value that you deliver, and so his margin wasn't where it needed to. And every time we'd have conversations, it's like, dude, you got to increase your pricing because you're not being paid on what you deliver. And so now he's at the point where he's doing really well because he understands, here's my cost, here's my gross profit, here's my net profit. I get all my overhead. He knows the numbers. And because of that, he's in a much more powerful place to make decisions about, okay, here's where I'm going to invest, here's what I'm going to do. And now he can do that because he understands the numbers, right?
Knowledge is power.
Yeah. And so do me a favor and tell me a little bit about, as you were scaling, tell me, who was your first employee, your first hire?
Oh, my gosh. You ready for this story? This is a freaking story right here. So I was in, forgot exactly at what point. This is one of my first jobs when I was first getting going. We had a job. It was a mulching job, and then we were removing kind of a fence. And I hired a couple buddies from high school that I used to go to, and they helped me with the project, and it was great. We were about halfway done with it, and then I went up to Publix to grab more ice and water. When I was walking out of Publix, we had this guy he was homeless. I could tell he stunk like terrible. Had long hair down to the back of his back, and man, he's panhandling, and I can't stand that. I'm like, if you want to change your life or make some money, you better get a job. So he said, hey, can I have $1? I said, no, absolutely not, but you can come work for it. Dude, he freaking grabbed his bag, hopped up and started running and jumped in my truck, and I was freaking out, man. I was 19 at the time, and I got some crazy guy. He looks whacked out, and he's coming to my job site, and I'm like, whoa, what is happening?
What did I do?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. So long story short, he crushed on the job site, worked circles around all my other buddies, and at the end of the job, he was laying on the ground huffing and puffing, and he's like, man, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Do you have any more work? And I was like, oh, my gosh, At that point, I only had jobs maybe 2 to 3 days a week, and I said, "Dude, I'll be happy to help you, and anytime I need you, I'll hire you on." Long story short, after a couple months, we had Hurricane Irma come, and we were full time.
Right.
The rest of our business was full time after that. We made $30,000 that first month. That month of the hurricane, it was insane. We've never made anything like that previously. We weren't operating like a real company yet. Then I didn't have to drop him. I would take him home to my mom's house, and he would shower in my mom's house, and then I'd take him to Taco Bell. Then I would drop him off in the woods with his dog, and we did that for about, I think, 3 to 6 months, and then he was able to save up enough money to buy himself a little trailer in North Fort Myers, and then eventually a car, and he would go to church every Sunday. It was just such an amazing story.
Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, wild. And so since now, we had him on board for about 5 years, and then he was quite older. He was 55 at the time, but worked circles around all the other guys. He has since passed away from cancer, but what an amazing guy he was.
Oh my gosh.
His name was Tom March. He was an incredible guy.
How cool. What a great story.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. I put myself in a position that I never knew I would be in, but it was awesome. He ended up being an incredible guy.
All right, so he was your first employee, which is so funny. And then as you start hiring folks, and you begin to build a culture in your company. And so tell me a little bit about, did you have a culture at the beginning? Was it just we work hard here, we play hard? I mean, what was the culture? What has it turned into? And then did it take time for you to kind of take a step back and say, what do I want this to look like? Mm-hmm. I mean, how did you set your culture?
So at first, I didn't really understand exactly what culture meant in business. I thought it was like ethical culture, like
we don't steal.
Yeah, right, stuff like that. And then once I started, watch some videos on YouTube and I started to learn about business, I used to work at Chick-fil-A, which is an incredible place to work, by the way, and I worked there in high school. I started to understand what they did and how they built culture. And I was like, oh, wow, when they would say this, that's because that was one of their core values, and it ran through to their culture, and it was really cool. And so I kind of took what I learned from there as an employee, and I created a couple things. So like I created accountability as one of them, passionate is one of them. And when I started cultivating that, then the Google reviews, and I would cast that to the team. Hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. We stand by this. Every customer has to be happy. We'll do whatever it takes. Then I would start to see Google reviews with, like, hey, the team was so passionate. The team they made a mistake, but then they fixed it. Accountability. I was able to see those core values and
played out.
That, yeah. So it was incredible. And so we just consistently spoke those out, and we're really excited because that's what builds a company. Like if you go to Chick-fil-A, you're gonna be able to feel their culture is much different than if you go to McDonald's.
Right.
And so the customer can feel that, and that goes into building a company and brand. But yeah, that was one thing. Culture was a very cool thing to learn in business because I had no idea what it actually was.
And so now as you look at continuing to build that culture, and how many employees do you have now?
So we had 15, and we just backed down to 10 because we're moving to a subcontractor model.
Okay. All right. So now you've got 10 employees. And so as it relates to how do you incentivize your employees? Do you are there profit shares? Do you give them any type of incentives? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started with profit shares, and that has been really good, where when we hit a really good quarter, we'll do a payout. I've actually gone a lot deeper. There's been some really hard challenges throughout the life of the business, and I've had some people who have really stepped up in moments and actually have saved the business from going under down, and I've given them a piece of equity. And so with that equity, each quarter they get a nice payout. It's a good chunk of change on top of some of their commissions that they make. So,
a lot of business owners would be scary about giving equity away. And I was at a seminar the other day, and they were talking about, business owners should not be afraid to do that. In fact, they say if you have more than 80% of your company, you're wrong.
Right.
You look at Warren Buffett, you look at Jeff Bezos, you look at Elon Musk, any of those guys, they own a very small percentage of their company.
Yeah, I think Tesla, Elon only owns like 19%.
Right. And so it's much better to have a bigger part of, or a smaller part of a big pie, which is what they have, versus the whole pie, because that pie may not really be that big. And so how have you? It sounds like you've embraced that idea.
Yeah, and that's what I've realized is first when I was trying to build the culture, build the company, I was like, I want everybody to have the most passionate job and their dream job, and I realized sometimes that's not always realistic. And I actually had to let some people go that I really loved through some hard times because I set their expectations up that it would be their perfect dream job, because that's what I tried to build for everybody. But sometimes, man, the years are hard. The long days can be really hard in business.
Yeah.
And so what I found is doing our best to make it a very good culture, a great company to work for, but that does only go so far. When you're able to incentivize with additional profits, I'm telling you, the buy-in is insane. The buy-in is so much stronger when you're able to give them a piece of the pie at the end of the day when you profit.
And so, I think the thing that makes sense is, like my crews I had, I think at 13, 15 guys at one time. And so, a lot of those guys are never going to be owners.
Right.
Right. They're going to be, that there's kind of a transient part of that business, just like yours. They might be there a couple years and then they move on because it's hard work. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But there are some other folks that can really help me scale that are in much more strategic positions, maybe operations, sales. It could be it could be a number of other things those are the folks that I want to incentivize.
Oh, yeah.
I also want to incentivize the day-to-day guys, but I do it differently. Maybe not with profit sharing or part of the company, but maybe we have quarterly profits. And so based on how the company does, you guys get a share of the pie, all that kind of stuff. But there's different kind of levers that you can pull depending on the strategy or the strategic position you're looking for or that you're doing. Right.
And there's something called emotional income and then financial income. Everybody knows the financial income, that's going to be your paycheck, an extra commission, or a bonus. But the emotional income comes from working at a good place and a place that cares about you. And so I think that's another thing that I've able to get more buy-in from my team by making sure I'm paying them emotionally as well. And so I do that in many different ways. But one of the really cool ways, and I recommend every company do this, is every quarter take maybe $1,000, or it could be $500 or $200. But we spend usually between $1,000 and $2,000 every quarter, and we take our team to go do something cool, whether it's Topgolf, and we pay for all the food. We don't do any alcohol, but pay for all the food, pay for the games, or we'll go bowling and laser tag after, or we'll go out to Tween Waters Marina and spend the day out there. I imagine if more companies did that, employees would have more emotional buy-in, and that's emotional pay that will help give their buy-in to do more for the company.
And those are great ideas. I mean, absolutely. We used to do that with our company. We take them to hockey games, and they could bring their family and their kids, and you learn so much more, and they get to see who their parents work with.
Right.
And you get a whole different level of buy-in at that point when you do that. We didn't do it enough. You guys sound like you're doing it much better than we did it. And so I would encourage people, make sure you reinvest in those guys. Take that day off every once in a while. Make that happen. It's expensive because, to take a whole day off for the company is a big deal.
Right.
We used to put on our answering machines back when they were answering machines, where we were at. Where, hey, today's the day that our company is going off to do this.
That's awesome.
And so when customers called back, they were like, dang, how was your fishing trip, or how was your hockey game, or whatever it was? And so they were able to explain, hey, we had a great time, did this. And so, they like, I like that kind of stuff. So they like, anybody would. So that's a great thing to do. So that's cool. So tell me a little bit about when it comes to some of the things from a marketing perspective that you've done that have been really successful, especially as you go on. We were talking in the hallway for a while about, reels and shorts and all these other kind of things that you're looking at. Give me a little bit of an idea or an appetite of some of the things that you're working on to get to that next level of 6 million. So
one of the things that we're really focusing on is organic faucets. So like B&I groups, that's something you really got to work on. But those are relationships that you can build in your community, and they can downstream to other relationships. So that's good. And then it's really about diversifying and then giving autonomy. So we have Facebook ads that we do. We have Google ads, and we try to be as strategic as possible. So many people are like, oh, yep, I'm going to spend $10,000 a month on these ads, and that's it. But then they leave it at that. You have to really dive into strategy. How am I going to reach my customers the best, and can I track it? I don't like to do things that I can't track. Like if I can't track, okay, this lead came from the B&I group, or this lead came from here, that makes me a little nervous. But when I can track it, oh my gosh, then it's like, boom, I'm going to throw more money into it. But I'd say the biggest thing when you're onboarding, with a company like yourself, is when you can go through and have a strategic couple hours and really come up with a diverse plan, and then revisit that each quarter to make sure that everything's working, because marketing is not a one-trick pony. Like I said, you have to diversify in a few different areas, but you also, everything's changing so fast.
Right. Absolutely.
Nobody is perfect at marketing. Nobody is an expert, because everything's changing so fast. The only way somebody's a true expert is if they're spending like day in and day out in the industry, and they're constantly willing to learn new things. So, and what we've done is we've just diversified, and we spend a couple hours every day with attention on how are we going to get better? How are we going to tweak our strategy, because maybe it's working or maybe it's not? And it's just like anything in your business. The more time you spend on it, the more that you're going to reap from it.
Right. I can tell you that, to your earlier point, things change. And even in marketing, things change. For example, a while ago, LSA ads were brand new. Local service ads were brand new, and so they were very popular, and they worked really well, and the return on investment was really good. And as people jumped on the platform, because they jumped off Google ads because they had bid up the bidding so much that it wasn't productive anymore, so they went to local service ads. So there's kind of a life cycle to some of these different things, right? And so you always got to be looking for and monitoring, to your point, the return on investment. Otherwise, you may be in a place that you shouldn't be, right? And so you look at other places like YouTube as an example. YouTube's a great platform, and it's really kind of the next platform, because it's the second leading search platform out there. It does a lot of educational things, but if you market correctly, that could be a really good platform depending on what the business is. And so you really do have to kind of, understand the different levers that you have and pull them and understand and watch the return on investment to make sure that it's continuing to move, or if not, you have to move your dollars.
Right. And the craziest thing is so many people, they just set it and forget it. And I love when my competition does that because I'm going to kick their freaking tail and I'm going to eat their lunch. Like, I don't want to hurt any other companies. But if they're going to take their eye off the ball and they're going to be lazy and they're not going to do what it takes to compete, I mean, that's the name of the game. It's business. We're not here for frillies and everybody gets a trophy.
Right.
You have to be paying attention to this stuff weekly. If in the old days, so many business owners will talk, if you look into them, they'll do one strategy. Like I said, they'll just base their entire business off referrals, and it worked for them great. Nowadays, it's not how it works. You have to be every single day, every week, learning, growing, figuring out what's hitting and what's not.
Right. Again, I see business guys come to me all the time and say, hey, I've grown my business through referrals, and now I want to do something else. And it's like, oh, great, you need to.
Right.
Because referrals are only so good.
Right.
And then after a while, you got to do something else. And so, but they can't just get their heads around doing things like, okay, so it's going to take a little while to do SEO,
Yes,
right?
right.
You're not going to rank on the top of Google after a week.
Right.
It's not going to happen. It may take you a while because everybody else has been doing it. And now you want to join the party, and that's not going to happen overnight, right?
Right.
And so you got to be able to say, okay, I'm going to invest in this. Now there's some other things that we can do that have a quicker return. Like you can do an email flyer to your current customer base. You can do retargeting. Right. You could do a bunch of other things that are local service ads that are a click and you get a lead kind of thing. You can do Angie's List if you want to do. There's a lot of things that you can do to get leads and get that lead going so that you can build your own. But at some point, if you can build your own organic demand, this is what we were talking about earlier, you're in a whole different level.
A whole different. You're not a commodity anymore.
Right.
And one thing for clarity for anybody listening, I'm not bashing like referrals. Like those are actually, we get a ton of work referrals because we make sure our customers are happy. But that's what builds the business, builds the brand. You can bootstrap on that. But then to scale, you have to continue to do other faucets. So just for clarity for people listening, we're talking about how to scale, and using these faucets right here is really important.
Right. And again, we're not bad-mouthing referrals. They're the cheapest thing that you want to do and get those all day long.
Right.
But that's not a way to scale a company, typically.
Right. Yeah, you have to dive in a lot deeper and have strategy and really dive deeper into the business to scale it.
One of the statistics you and I were talking about in the hallway earlier was, out of the small businesses that are out there, only 0.003% make it to $1 million, which is a very low percentage.
Right.
And out of those that make it to $1 million, 15% of it can make it to $10 million.
Wow.
And 50% of those that make it to 10 million make it to 50 million bucks.
Those statistics are crazy.
And so it just goes to show you that first million is so hard. It's just so hard because you're learning so much and you're doing all those things that you're trying to do. We talked about bringing on a coach, which is a good idea, and then just building processes. Right, that's probably one of the biggest things I learned when we were scaling is you got to build processes because I'm adding people to the team, and if I'm going to have somebody come in and do sales, I had to have done sales. I had to write the job description to sales. I had to do the training videos for sales. I had to teach them how to do that, so then I can have them do sales, and then I can go on and do the next thing. Right. And so scaling takes processes.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about, some of the processes that you're putting in place to get yourself to the next, or what did you do for the first million? And then what are you doing now to get it to the 10 million?
So what I want to do, I want to back up real quick because those statistics are insane when it comes to, what do you say, 0.003% to make it to $1 million?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because they don't have enough margin, so enough breathing room, whether that's cash, resources, talent, they don't have enough margin yet to create the SOPs. But when you're able to pull away from your business and then create those SOPs, you need that margin to do that. But once you do those SOPs,
SOPs is standard operating procedures for those that don't know.
Perfect. There you go. I love it. And those are things that build your company. That's how you can continue to create even more margin to think about strategic planning. But what we have done in our business is create those, and that helps us onboard people faster. It helps clarity. So like, for example, we go through a training process where they understand certain SOPs and they understand how to do their job, why our process is different than other people's. But then when they forget that in 3 months, they don't have to call the managers and bug them while the manager's trying to sell a job or deal with another situation. They can go back to our written playbook and remind themselves how to handle a certain situation when it comes up. And I can't tell you how many companies I think get destroyed by the manager's or the boss's phone constantly ringing off the hook.
Right.
Because when the manager or boss phone is constantly ringing, he can't focus on that strategic stuff. And the SOPs are one of the things that help create that margin of separation, not to leave these guys out in the abyss, but to answer the stupid questions that they should have went to the manual first and not bug your phone and distract you.
Right. Jeff Evers from Paper Protector was here last week, and he was talking about doing SOPs and basically doing the video library. And making sure his guys go through the training programs. And if they have a question, they can take a picture of barcode and it'll walk them through the step-by-step what they should be doing and putting all that kind of stuff in place. And that's just amazing stuff. And so that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's really hard to scale quality craftsmanship. Quality craftsmanship, to scale it is really hard, but the SOPs can really help you take an average worker to a great worker, because then they can say, okay, we sand the joints like this, and then we seal the pavers like this, and you have basically weeks and months worth of training that you can do in a day, and they can come back and refer to it. Right. And so when they forget, it's right there.
And then, building those kind of things, it also allows you, if you ever want to sell your company, not that you ever want to sell your company at this point in time, but, when we were looking at this, we thought, okay, so if I can build all this stuff in there, if I have the processes in place and I have the SOPs and I have all this kind of stuff in place, anybody can buy my company, right?
Yeah,
because I'm not necessarily running my company. It's kind of running itself. I got the people in place. Everybody knows what to do.
Right.
And so, if you're looking at someday down the road to sell your company, just think about, if you've got all this stuff in place, anybody can buy your company. So it opened up the world to be able to buy your company, which means higher prices.
Yeah.
People are willing to buy a company where everything is set. You got libraries of video. The guy's got a job description. He knows what it is. You asked him about it. He said, yeah, they've got rewards. They've got all this stuff in place. And so, there's just tweaking that needs to be done, and there's value in that.
Right. And you know what else, while we're on the topic of possibly selling a company, one of the other things that makes extreme value when you're selling a company is having recurring income.
Yes.
So there's a difference between recurring and reoccurring. Reoccurring is when it's like on a monthly or quarterly basis, regular. Reoccurring is when it happens now, and then it's probably going to happen a year later, and then a year later after that. Recurring income is so powerful. It's what Netflix has done. Man, they are like the power of, or they're an incredible example of recurring income. They have built their entire business on that. And when you can add recurring revenue to your business, it doesn't have to be 100% of your business, but if you can get it to cover your overhead. So a lot of companies, their overhead will be maybe between 10 and 30%, depending on what industry you're in. But if you can get your recurring revenue monthly income to match your recurring overhead expenses, dude, that's a hack. That is one of the biggest things that I've learned in business when it comes to cash flow and finances, is making sure our company is dialed in on that. We started pest control services because the landscape maintenance wasn't as profitable, but pest control was recurring with high profit margins, and we could keep customers happy doing that. I literally went out and hired somebody with a certified operator license, and made that investment in the business, because it shifted any slow months that we had. We shifted, so now we're break even every month instead of losing $50,000 on our slow months, and that has been an incredible cash flow fix to our business.
I mean, when we talked to Jeff Evers last week, he talked about what they came up with. They developed a maintenance program. I mean, here these guys are. They basically seal pavers. You do that every 2 years. So that in and itself is somewhat of a recurring business. but they wanted to touch their customers more. And so they came up with, hey, we can come out and do maintenance on a regular basis. We'll come out. If you sign up for the program, we'll come out, we'll pressure wash it once or twice a year. I mean, and so they built, you said, in a whole another model about reoccurring income that they have that is going to really help their company moving forward. And you can do that in the hardscape business that, this podcast is for. There's tons of things that you can do that for. You can, I'm talking to one of my concrete guys. They do concrete. So when they put in a driveway, they're not going to put in another driveway at the same place. Now, they may do it at his neighbor. They may extend it. But what can you do to, okay, hey, we can come out and basically maintain your driveway. We'll come out and clean it. We'll do a sealant so that it won't get dirty. So we can do that kind of stuff. If you think hard enough, there's things that you can do to make a reoccurring business for one that doesn't really look that way, right?
Right. And like, you can also be creative, like a concrete or hardscape company. They could offer irrigation services on the side. Like, it doesn't totally jive, and it might feel a little bit weird, or cleaning out the gutters. There's many different things, or filling their salt tank on their water softener. Like, you can create. It doesn't have to be so pretty and it doesn't have to be sexy, but it does have to be recurring, and it has to be something that's going to offset your monthly overhead expenses. And when you can do that, it's incredible. It gives you so much more confidence to run your business when you know you're going to at least break even every month.
Right. What a great thing. All right. So tell me a little bit about, as you look for the next couple of years, tell me about some of the things you're most excited about.
Oh my gosh, man. The industry that we live in and work in is very, they're so limited as far as their mindset. Their mindset is, it's set like 20, 30 years in the past. With AI, with all this technology that is out there now, you can make an incredible experience for your customers. So customers are being trained by Amazon, by Sam's Club, by all these other online, basically big merchant companies. They have streamlined the shopping process. The shopping process is continuing to change to be more convenient for the customer, faster, and just more enjoyable. And so our industries, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I need to be the old-fashioned salesman and go out there and meet them and talk to them. Like, yes, you can do that. That's good old-fashioned business, and it does work. But I'm going to change the entire marketplace for at least my company, and I'm excited to be a leader in it and watch other companies do the same. When you can offer an online experience, I can design and give you a whole backyard renovation project with a proposal without even going to your property. And there's so many people who have fears about that. Like, oh my gosh, what if I miscalculated? What if I underquoted this or did that? There's ways around it.
Right.
Through every objection, every fear, there's ways around it. And so I'm excited to be able to change the entire marketplace and offer consumers the experience that they want and nobody else is doing.
Right. How cool is that? But, talking about technology, AI is huge today. If you don't have a website that has an AI bot on it that engages people or allows people to communicate with you via text, you're missing, because people want to, especially this generation, they would rather text than talk to you. Right. So if you're not giving them the option, you're missing it.
Right.
Likewise, I have customers that don't have. So when someone calls and the line's busy, they have to wait until they get off the phone and do whatever they do, and then they're going to get back to them. There's technology that's out there that 5 seconds after they called and got didn't get somebody to answer the phone, they should be getting a text message saying, hey, I saw you called.
Right.
How can I help? What can we do? How do I get the dialogue going on? And there's AI technology that will that you feed, that you educate on how you do business, so that you can ask them questions and get them going, and then you can get a human to be involved. You can schedule them. You can do a ton of different things.
Right.
But it's all about the experience that you talked about earlier. They want an experience, and they want it now, right?
Right.
And they're not going to wait for you to pick up the phone or to look at your caller ID and call them back. They want you to engage with them now. And so if you're not doing that, you're missing something, right?
Right. And they're just going to call the next company, man. And I feel I've done a good job of getting a lot of that stuff streamlined and figured out. But, man, I'm just on the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more for me to continue to learn each week that it makes me anxious and excited to talk about it now, because I'm like, man, I know there's new things coming out each week that I need to get on top of so I can serve my clients better. And it's really exciting as we talk about it, because there's so much potential. if you're in the game to win and you're paying attention,
Right.
you will be able to leverage all these tools, systems, and processes to make a better experience for your customer. And in return, you're going to benefit from it because you're going to make money. You're going to profit. There's something called perceived value that so many people don't understand or don't lean into. If you can offer a solution to your customer's problem and solve it better than anybody else, faster than anybody else, they're going to pay you more. What happens when you make more money? You're more profitable. You can go buy a cool boat. You can reinvest. My favorite thing, you can reinvest in the community and do awesome things like Steve Honch did. He didn't wait for it during the hurricane. Steve Honch went in there and built their own damn bridge for Matt Lachey over Pine Island area when things were crazy. He said, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to rebuild my community. And that's awesome. That's freaking awesome. And I want to do that. I want to be an awesome business leader where I make plenty of money that I don't have to wait for the government to help my community. I want to be a pillar in my community. That way I can help pour back in and support whenever they need support.
You know, I talked about this, I think, on one of my webcasts or something like that. We talked about niching and messaging, right? You know who your customer is, and because you know who your customer is, you know how to speak to them.
Right.
You know what their problems are, what their fears are, what their goals are, and being able to talk about that specifically puts you in a different category than I can, you know, the guy that markets, I can do all things to all people. Now you're saying, I know you, I can do this, I can satisfy this fear, this, whatever it is. And because of that, they're going to pay you more money.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that's the difference. That's how you build your company. That's how you build margin and do that kind of stuff. So messaging is so big. And so it sounds like you're pretty locked into that.
Well, that's the thing is we're always having strategic, not only marketing, but strategic business meetings. Like this Thursday and this Friday, dude, we're taking the 4 executives in my company. We're going dark. Our phones are going to the side. We're not answering any messages. Our assistants are going to do it for us. And we're going to talk about strategic business. We did not hit our goal for this first quarter. We were $80,000 short of it. And we're going to figure out how we can not only make up that $80,000 that we were lacking, but we're going to dive into what messaging do we need to shift? What ads do we need to churn off and recreate new ones at different angles so that way we can reach more clients? Because the goal isn't just to reach more clients to get more money. The goal is to reach more clients to be able to solve these consumers' problems, because these consumers have problems. They just don't know who to turn to, and a lot of times they turn to the wrong companies just because they get those companies get lucky and they end up winning the job, but the consumer's not happy at the end. We want to solve their problems and satisfy the consumers, and it's dope because we get paid really well when we do that. And everybody wins. The customer's happy. We're happy because we're able to pour money back into the community and buy cool things and, you know, give money back to our team. Like, we thrive. Freaking thrive off that stuff. It fires me up.
Well, you know, so we were talking in the hallway again earlier today about, you know, people will say, hey, there's a lot of weird things going on right now. It's a hard time to to invest. We don't know what's going to happen. Yet at the same time, you're dealing with the same kind of stuff. And we were talking about opportunities out there in the hallway with respect to, hey, there's 24,000 houses for sale in Lee County.
Dude, screw the news. Turn off the freaking news. Dive into dive into your customers' problems, whatever problems they're having. Dive into creating the best solutions and go out and serve. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go for it. I want you to talk about this here.
No, so what I was saying, you know, the opportunity of 24,000 houses out there that are all for sale.
Yes.
Well, there's 24,000 houses for sale, right? And they all look the same. Right. And so what can you bring to these guys that have had houses that have been on the market for a period of time and say, I can bring you a solution. I can make your house pop.
Yes.
Right? And so, because right now it doesn't pop, and you can bring in anybody from a pressure washer to do the roof to the guy, you redo the landscaping, and you can do it, you know, on a decent budget, but you can make that house pop to where it can sell in the next, 6 months or whatever.
Oh yeah, because everything's about first impression. You know, when you first meet your wife or whatever, it's all about first impression. And so, like, when a new homeowner pulls up to their potential house, it's like, oh wow, you know, this homeowner really cared. You know, they got the roof clean, the landscapes. I got a really good feeling about this house. Right. I'm not sure what it is, but, you know, it's the curb appeal. Right. And man, I'm telling you what, that if you have a optimistic mindset, I'd be willing to bet that 0.003% that get to $1 million, I think those are the people that have optimistic mindsets that want to grow and want to make opportunities out of nothing like we're talking about.
Right. Well, how cool. Well, I'm excited for the future for you guys. I'm sure you're going to kill it.
Hey, hope so.
Yeah, I mean, $3 million now. You're going to do $6 million next year. I have no doubt about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I think the listeners got a lot out of this. Can't wait to have you back in another year or so to give us an update on how things are going.
Heck yeah, hopefully we'll be at 10 million then.
All right, thanks. Bailey Peer from Peer Landscaping. Thanks, guys.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Hardscape Insider Podcast. Big thanks to Bailey Peer for sharing his knowledge and experience with us today. Next month, we've got something really special for you. Aaron Kinas from Ageless Concrete will be joining us to talk about scaling your business, sharing some insights that could really change the way you do business. You don't want to miss it. If you like today's podcast, join the Hardscape Insider Podcast community. Follow us on all the social media or visit Citadel Hardscape Marketing for help growing your business. I also encourage you to join our new Facebook group called Hardscape Contractors Mastermind, where we will share insights and best practices for the industry. Until then, keep building, keep growing, and we'll see you next time on the Hardscape Insider Podcast.